Welcome to Unholy Inquiry, where each tale leads you deeper into a labyrinth of mystery waiting to be uncovered. This time, join us as we delve into Hercule Poirot and the Locked Room at Number 9, a fan-crafted story that pays homage to the genius and sophistication of Agatha Christie's iconic detective, Hercule Poirot. We are thrilled to have you with us on this captivating journey. Share your thoughts, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you spot any details we missed, your feedback is invaluable. Together, let's continue to shape even more thrilling enigmas. Chapter 1: The Cipher of the Closed Door. A scream, raw and primal, erupted from the depths of Maplewood Manor, splintering the serene night air like a shard of glass. In the flickering gaslight of the elegant drawing room, the guests, caught mid-conversation, froze, the clinking of crystal glasses suspended in horror. The sound was one the inhabitants of this tranquil village had never known, a violent precursor to what lay hidden beyond the ornately carved mahogany door to the study, a door that would soon remain closed forever. Sir Reginald Pritchard, the esteemed baronet known for his fortune and his secrets, was indeed inside, and whispers of the unthinkable began to spiral through the assembly. When the door was forcibly opened, a man's lifeless body lay slumped against the desk, the sharp click of his polished shoes standing like guards over an unsolved riddle. The ink of his unfinished letter smudged across the desk in an unholy testament of his final moments. The room, thick with opulence, bore witness to the shock that reverberated through the estate. "Who could have done this?" gasped Mrs. Eleanor Treadwell, her hand fluttering to her throat, pearls shining like scattered stars against her crimson dress. "We were all together. It is impossible." The room bristled with tension, the atmosphere crackling like the heavy summer air before a storm. It was indeed rather peculiar. No signs of struggle marred the immaculate space. A quick glance around revealed startled faces turned toward one another, eyes wide with disbelief. Yet Poirot stood still, his emerald eyes narrowing, as he surveyed the chaos with serene focus, his mind a whirring machine of deduction. "Mon ami, you will please calm yourselves," said Poirot, his voice a gentle but firm anchor amid the rising tide of panic. "Could it be that one among you holds the answer to this abominable act?" The group exchanged glances, suspicion prickling the air like a sudden cold breeze. Mr. Fitzgerald, a rival of the late baronet, and one who had frequently expressed his disdain for Sir Reginald's misplaced airs, stepped closer, his brow slick with perspiration. "I was in the library. I could not have done this," he proclaimed, his hands shaking slightly as he clutched the edges of his jacket. "Yet, was it not you who argued with him just this morning over the matter of his estate?" Poirot countered, each word precisely aimed, like a dart from his precise and deliberate mind. "An altercation, but merely over real estate valuations," Fitzgerald retorted fiercely, eyes darting about, the confidence in his voice betraying an undercurrent of fear. "Tyler, do you not recall the argument regarding his investments? He claimed you stood to lose considerable sums if he pursued his latest acquisition," murmured Agatha, a distant relative of the deceased, her face pale and drawn, eyes flickering as secrets threatened to surface. "Perhaps a desperate man would go to terrible lengths." "Jealousy and greed," Poirot murmured to himself, a slight smile cresting his lips as he observed the unraveling tapestry of human emotion. But deep in its fibers lay a hidden thread. He noticed the intricately folded note, half peeled from Sir Reginald's grasp. that hinted at other motivations, other desires lurking in the corners of this dimly lit room. And still, how had the murderer escaped from this very locked chamber, its only exit a tall window barred by a latticework of heavy iron? Poirot peered out, rain-drenched leaves shining under the pallid moonlight. No footprints marked the soft earth below. "May I inquire," he said, turning back to the guests, "whether anyone has noticed a peculiar detail about the letter before us? A cipher, perhaps?" The guests exchanged puzzled glances, and Mrs. Treadwell twirled a strand of her hair, her eyes darting nervously. "A cipher? Do you mean—" "Mayhap it is code," interjected a young man, Geoffrey, his voice trembling. "Meant for a person unknown. If that is the case, it could imply—" "Enough!" erupted Fitzgerald, his demeanor cracking. "What more do you need? We are stuck in a disastrous fable of your making." Poirot's gaze shifted to him, piercingly analytical. His pulse quickened slightly. Fitzgerald's fear was blinding and too pronounced. "Ah, but what more do we need indeed?" he mused, yet another thread of suspicion wrapping itself around Fitzgerald, binding him to potential criminality. The atmosphere thickened with uneasy energy, and someone gasped as yet another figure pressed through the group, his face pale, appearing as though he had just returned from the grave. It was Constable Maloney, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this near the study door," he proclaimed, voice trembling under the weight of dread. Poirot stepped forward. Curiosity piqued, but even before he could ask, the words leapt from the constable's shaking hands. It was a note marked with scrawled letters. "And I will have my revenge, Reginald. You cannot bury the past." Gasps escaped from the guests as the implications settled, trembling vibrations filling the air like a distant thunderclap. Faces turned toward Poirot, begging for clarity, yet the detective felt something sinister coil tighter. Time was slipping through his fingers like sand, and the shadows around him seemed heavier. Before he could propose his next line of inquiry, there came the muffled sound of footsteps behind the door they had just breached. Poirot's heart raced in rhythm with the pulse of the storm outside that had given no indication of mercy. Another scream echoed, this time muffled as if from the depths of the manor, and every soul in the room felt a visceral jolt as time shrank into a moment of dreadful understanding. There was someone, or something, else lurking in the corners of this mystery, waiting, watching. "Constable!" Poirot shouted, pocketing the cryptic note, the weight of the world's questions swirling behind those twinkling emerald eyes. "Stay with the body. The game is afoot." And with that, he dashed toward the noise, feeling the shadows close in around him, the tension rising like smoke in the air, laced with dread. Chapter 2. The Unexpected Invitation. A burst of wind howled through the manor like the anguished cries of a lost soul, and with it came the sound of a shattering glass, the jagged fragments strewn across the floor, each shard mirroring the chaos that had unfolded. Poirot, driven by instinct and an urgent need to protect those still within the confines of Maplewood Manor, turned sharply as the constable, Maloney, staggered backward, his face as pale as the moonlight flooding through the tall windows. It wasn't a stranger," he gasped, each word punctuated by a ragged breath. "Someone inside. I saw." Poirot's emerald eyes gleamed with heightened intensity as he regarded the constable. "Mon ami, you must gather your wits. A rational explanation is essential in these dire times." Yet even as he spoke, his mind raced, flitting through every detail of the proceedings and the people surrounding him. Who was capable of such horrific duplicity, and why had the shadows concealed this truth until now? Sir Reginald was a man of inscrutable depth, murmured Agatha, her voice trembling as she stepped forward, her features alight with fresh panic. But to think there was someone who sought to harm him among us. I must stress, Poirot interjected, gesturing at her to center herself, that the identity of the murderer may hold the answers to our greatest questions, or perhaps deepen the mystery even further. Before he could formulate a strategy to extract the truth, a glint caught his eye from across the room. From the clutter of discarded wine corks and concern-laden faces emerged a letter, comically incongruous amidst the tension that gripped the gathering. It lay isolated on the polished surface of the mahogany table, an unexpected contradiction to the chaos. Its envelope was pristine, meticulously folded, and postmarked days earlier. "Here," he exclaimed, reaching toward the note. "It seems that someone has chosen to communicate from beyond the grave, even if the sender did not realize it would merely reach us after tragedy had painted this night in shadows." Hands trembling, Poirot unfolded the letter, his breath momentarily caught as he read the neat, decisive script, stark against the pale background. "My dearest Reginald," it began, "the truth remains buried within the walls of Maplewood Manor, held captive by cowardice and greed. Beware your friends, for I shall strike before dawn." Gasps echoed through the room, reverberating like the storm outside, intensifying the knots of anxiety. "Who sent this?" Fitzgerald's voice quivered with indignation, a stark contrast to the murmurings of dread that spread through the crowd. "It could be a ruse. Think of it. A misguided fool exposing himself. One of us?" Poirot studied the faces before him, the weight of scruples and schemes thickening the air. "We? But why join the fray with a warning? Could it be an attempt to displace blame, or perhaps something more diabolical?" He could feel the intensity of their gazes as each individual held tightly to their own secrets, their motivations curling like smoke in the dim light. Then, as if smitten by an unseen hand, the heavy oak door of the study creaked open, and all eyes turned, pulses quickening with apprehension. It was Mrs. Treadwell, looking every bit as if she had stumbled across a grave. I had to fetch my shawl," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, before her gaze fell upon the letter drifting like a spectre between Poirot's fingertips. "What is happening? What have you found?" "Mon ami, have you ever visited the upper floors of this estate before?" Poirot queried lightly, though his scrutiny was sharp. "Surely such an old manor holds its fair share of secrets, yes?" A small twitch beneath her eyes suggested a flicker of unease. "Merely a storage room," she replied too hastily, brushing strands of hair behind her ear. "As a child, I was told tales, curious things, but that was years ago. I carry no burdens from the past, Mr. Poirot." "Ah, yet Miss Agatha suggests otherwise." His tone was measured, embodying the calm that belied the storm swirling in that grand estate. "Shall we not examine that intrigue further?" Suddenly, the once comforting flicker of gaslight dimmed, and the sounds of the storm intensified, thundering outside, drowning out the unsteady heartbeats of the guests. Dread dripped from the very walls of the manor as they exchanged anxious glances, the air thickening with unsaid words and pent-up fears. Then, without warning, a scream erupted from the corridor above, piercing through the layers of tension that thickened the room. Every occupant turned toward the staircase, their faces drained of color as the sound echoed once more. A cry, desperate and paralyzing, cascading downward like a cascade of shattered glass. "Not again!" cried Fitzgerald, his facade of bravado crumbling as he fumbled toward the stairs. Poirot, however, stood frozen, the surrounding chaos collapsing into sharp focus. His mind traced the thread of the letter, the sound of voices murmuring uncertainties, the shadowed expressions hastily masked with confusion. It was not the crime he had anticipated, nor the solution he had expected, but the fabric of the night was unraveling, and he could sense that each movement could fracture the remaining tapestry of trust. With decisive authority, he commanded, "Stay here. I must see what manner of trouble that is." But as he took his first step, a chilling realization settled like ice in his veins. A figure emerged from the shadows at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the flickering light, their features concealed, but their form unmistakable. "Ah, but what makes you think I am the one to blame?" The voice, smooth and cold, echoed off the walls, twisting through the air like a serpent ready to strike. Poirot's breath hitched, his mind racing as he stood at the precipice of revelation, the night fraught with impending danger. The letter cracked like thunder in his mind. Who among them had navigated this labyrinth of lies? And would they lead him straight to the heart of darkness before the dawn unfurled its terrible truths? The game had taken a terrifying turn, and the chase was far from over. Chapter 3. The Alibi That Fell Apart. A loud crash echoed through the dimly illuminated hall, the sound of something heavy crashing against the floor, forcing Poirot to whirl around, his heart racing. A gas lamp flickered dangerously, casting eerie shadows against the walls, illuminating the scene of devastation. A shattered mirror, its fragments reflecting terror and panic across their grim expressions. As the last splinter settled, the room fell into a dreadful silence, pregnant with unspoken fears. "It was him," cried Geoffrey, pointing a trembling finger toward Fitzgerald, whose face blanched, betraying a mix of outrage and guilt, but Poirot's gaze narrowed, surveying the room for the tremors of deceit. "Hold your accusations, mon ami," he declared, his voice firm, yet edged with concern, as both men stood locked in an unyielding stare. "With a murderer lurking amongst us, we must consider evidence, not mere perception." His emerald eyes flitted over the group, gleaning nuances beneath the surface, hands tightly clasping, eyes darting, shallow breaths punctuating the heavy atmosphere that so thickly permeated the air. "We are in the midst of a storm, both outside and within these walls," he added, letting the words linger as the wind howled like a gathering beast. Then the whisper of malice surfaced in the trembling voice of Agatha. "You cannot possibly believe any of us could be—" she faltered, her eyes cutting to Fitzgerald as if searching for validation, and for a moment uncertainty flickered behind her mask. "We were all present in the lounge, safe from the storm, until the scream, until all of this. Yet can you account for each moment, mon ami?" Poirot pressed, noting the way her hands gestured nervously, the slightest tremor betraying her calm facade. "And how many of you can confirm that you were indeed together? Or were there chances for individuation, for sinister designs?" Fitzgerald's mask shattered. Anger flared in his eyes, but he choked it back with evident effort. "We were together," he barked, but the wavering quality of his voice raised an echo of doubt. I heard the scream, just like you. Who wouldn't?" "Who indeed?" Poirot mused, a distinct glint flashing in his observant gaze as he approached the shattered mirror, stepping carefully over the fragments. "But what if our presumed sanctuary became a hunting ground for one amongst us?" He picked up a piece of glass delicately, holding it to the flickering light. As helpless as the shattered reflection, torn apart by a single hand. "No, it cannot be," Mrs. Treadwell interjected, stepping forward with an almost pleading look, as if drawing strength from the detective's unwavering focus. "We cannot suspect each other, Sir Reginald." Her voice cracked, emotions swirling as she flicked her gaze toward the darkened study door, quiet yet looming. "He was our friend. It is madness." "Madness is often the veil behind which lies the truth, madame," Poirot replied, steadily, softening his words, yet keenly probing. "And it is extreme emotion that breeds desperation, yes? Can you tell me where you were when the storm turned perilous?" Her lips pursed tightly, and after a moment's hesitation, she retreated slightly. I was looking for my shawl. I needed it." But beneath her casual tone, Poirot noticed her restlessness. She was like a coiled spring, prepared to unleash itself, and yet starkly bound by something deeper. "Tell me, Mrs. Treadwell, did you find your shawl in this turmoil, or was there something more pressing that drew you from the company?" he inquired, keenly aware of Fitzgerald's tense posture beside her as he seemed to absorb the deception that dripped from the truth. I found it," she stumbled, flustered. "In the corner, by the staircase. But I only went out for a moment. I was frightened. I thought I had heard something." "Indeed." The words rolled off Poirot's tongue, deliberate, as he wove through the suspicions thickening, like fog. "While you were searching for shelter, it is conceivable others, too, found their comforts elsewhere." His keen eyes caught movement, and he turned his attention toward Geoffrey, who had gone suspiciously silent. "Then speak, Geoffrey," Poirot pressed, drawing the young man's troubled gaze. "Where were you when the scream echoed through these hallowed halls?" I stayed in the lounge," Geoffrey stammered, his voice barely rising above the clamor of the storm outside. Eyes wide and darting. You don't think Fitzgerald seized the moment, stepping threateningly closer, waving a finger. "You were rather quiet then." His words dripped with accusation. "What did you hear that warranted such silence? It seems we are discovering alibis that fall apart." "There's nothing wrong with my alibi," Geoffrey shot back, emotion breaking through. "You were the one in the storeroom with the second letter. Why isn't anyone questioning you?" Shadows shifted amongst the assembled guests, doubtful whispers entwining with the thunderclaps outside, and Poirot, ever vigilant, scrutinized Fitzgerald's reaction. "Ah, but who received the second letter? It was you, was it not?" Fitzgerald's voice rose, pointing an accusatory finger at Poirot in a sudden shift of focus. The gaslight flickered and dimmed as if acknowledging the unsettled atmosphere. "It seems we have a reaper among us as well. Perhaps you are entwined in these webs." "Stop," Poirot commanded, his tone rising to quell the brewing tempest. "Accusations without foundation serve only to distract. The letter holds more than mere words. It speaks of vengeance entwined with past sins. Were you not curious which of us might be the nameless foe?" The winds crescendoed, rattling the shutters as the group recoiled at the unflinching resolve in his emerald eyes. The atmosphere swelled, charging with an electric tension. Then a final alert screamed from the darkness, ripping through their gathering. A sudden crash came from above, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, hurried and suppressed. "They're coming!" Poirot's whisper cut through the clamor. Their collective breath caught in the icy grip of anticipated dread. The guests exchanged glances, fear spiraling in their eyes as a looming doubt settled among them like a shroud. Yet before he could utter another word, the door swung open, inward, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, barely illuminated by the flickering light. Poirot felt a fleeting ache in his chest as the tension coiled tighter, eyes widening as he braced for their next revelation. "What more lies concealed in that shadowed figure?" he all but exclaimed, stepping closer, but the presence before him, shrouded, held their breath. Something sharp glinted within, and Poirot felt chilling clarity settle around him as the piece in his grand puzzle turned, tightening the noose of fate. The dusk of the room thickened, shadows deepening as Poirot reached forward, adrenaline surging. "Who are you? What are you doing?" The figure stepped forward, shadows battling against the flickering gaslight, until the gasp echoed through the manor, a singular voice cloaked in confidence and cold malice. "I am your reckoning, Poirot, and you will soon wish you never stepped foot into Maplewood." And at that, the candle flames flickered out, plunging them all into pitch darkness, shadows consuming their cries as realization crashed through the room like a storm, unleashed, and Poirot found himself staring into the heart of the terror that awaited. Chapter 4. The Will That Was Never Signed. A knife of silence pierced the gloom as Poirot's fingers brushed against the cold metal of something distinctly wrong. The murmur of the tempest outside had quieted to a rustle, the air thick with an electric chill that settled like dread in his bones. He had only just stepped back from the threshold when the flickering gaslight illuminated an envelope perched precariously atop the shattered remnants of the mirror. He snatched it up as if it were a venomous serpent, the corners of the parchment crisp and undisturbed. It bore a solitary note, its ink slanted as though hurriedly scrawled in the dim light of desperation. "Sir Reginald's will, a family secret worth killing for," he whispered incredulously, the words tumbling out like carved rocks from a precipice, each one more unsettling than the last. He could feel eyes, dark and intent, shifting about him, each suspect ensnared in the web of his doubt. The wind howled outside as if in warning, and he turned sharply, his mind racing. Who among them would go to such lengths for inheritance, for secrets buried deep in the earth of Maplewood? Remarkable, non? A piece of paper accumulating dust where it should have been a solemn testament of familial devotion. Poirot mused aloud, the letter clenched in his hand as tensions amongst the group grew taut as a drawn bowstring. "Madame Agatha, would you care to divulge what your relationship was with Sir Reginald's estate?" His piercing, emerald gaze leveled on her, a flicker of unease sharp in her eyes like a sudden gust through fragile leaves. "Why would I? I am as confused as the rest of you." Agatha's voice fluttered, high and defensively frantic. "I was a friend. All I know is what was shared among us." Poirot remained unfazed, his intuition arching. "And yet you recognized the potential for hidden sentiments. Did you ever contemplate what those sentiments might mean for you, or for someone else?" In response, a heartbeat of silence slammed against him, heavy as the storm clouds above. From the periphery of his vision, Fitzgerald stepped forward, his abrupt advance as sharp as the thunder clapping outside. "What do you imply?" he spat, eyes narrowing as he loomed over Agatha. There was a spark of something perilous in that gaze, a glimpse into the tempest of unease roiling within. "This has nothing to do with you." "Ah, but I contend it has everything to do with all of us," Poirot countered smoothly, never one to show fear. "This is not merely a matter of alibis and misplaced intentions, mes amis. Here in this letter, we might uncover a family secret worth killing for, or rather, killing for something equally insidious, a truth that heeded darkness and deceit. Is that assumption, then? Geoffrey interjected, his nervousness bubbling to the surface. You're suggesting the rest of us would value a dead man's possessions more than our lives? How macabre! Macabre is sometimes the delicate brush upon which truth is painted, Poirot announced, his tone steady. And while we debate, I suspect darker plots play out silently among us. Just as Poirot opened his mouth to propose another question, an alarming creak echoed from the darkened hallway, the sound of a door cautiously nudging ajar, followed by a familiar figure framed against tumultuous shadows. The gaslight flickered ominously, revealing Mrs. Treadwell, her breath hitching in the air as she moved closer, her visage a mask of trepidation. I heard you all shouting. What is happening? She stuttered, her hands wringing nervously. We must not suspect each other. Not now. Not when Sir Reginald lies cold and alone. But that's precisely the issue, mon ami, Poirot stated, affixing her with a determined look. Your sentiments, though noble, divert our focus from the meanings behind wealth and inheritance. I warn you, emotional shields often mask more lethal defaults. Perhaps there exists insatiable greed amidst us? Nonsense, cried Fitzgerald, though his composure began to shatter beneath Poirot's scrutiny, like shards of the broken mirror scattered across the floor. You look at yourself, Poirot. You are, after all, the stranger, the interloper. Why delve into my affairs? His words dripped in accusation, sparking suspicion among the guests. Poirot raised an eyebrow, the interplay of light dancing across his features. Perhaps I must remind you, Fitzgerald, that these affairs have taken a decidedly sinister turn. The storm rages not only outside these walls, but within your own minds. What synergy propelled this calamity, this seeking of will? With the thunder shaking the ground beneath them, chaos was eclipsed by another crash, more immediate and jarring than before, the sound of glass splintering somewhere closer than the prior crash. An unnatural tension wound through the guests, amplifying the deep anxieties that nested between them. It seems the darkness lingers over much more than just the terrible. Screams, Poirot breathed, twisting the letter between his fingers. Perhaps one among us has unraveled more than just the road to riches, he added, taking in the collective fear, gripping them as tightly as the storm. Tell me, were there any whispers around this house before tonight that spoke more of familial bond than deceit? But before any retort could escape, the lights flickered violently, plunging them once more into darkness before flaring back into vision, and they froze for a quick silhouette passed beyond the dim flicker, moving stealthily toward the staircase. "Who's there?" Geoffrey called, the trembling in his voice betraying the bravado he attempted to muster. The shadows shifted again as something glinted beneath the gaslight, a brass key, tumbling downward from the figure's grasp. For one terrifying moment, Poirot's heart quickened with dread as the figure paused at the top of the staircase, a grim spectre of uncertainty poised for flight. The guests huddled closer, gasping, silence wrapping around them, before a low, chilling laugh resonated in the air, so familiar that it swept away any warmth from Poirot's cautious heart. "I did warn you, didn't I?" The voice echoed above, crawling beneath their skin with every syllable. "The will that was never signed will bind us all, and death isn't the half of it. It is the truth that will cut deeper." As the figure darted into the darkness, a second crash reverberated, and Poirot felt that all was lost. The line between sanity and madness had become utterly obscured. With panic rising like a tide, The last remnants of clarity surged within him, and he knew the race was not only against finding a killer, but also to unearth a truth scarred by betrayal that might snatch their lives away before the night ended. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Act. A loud thud shattered the deafening silence, echoing off the stone walls like a gunshot, propelling a cold wave of dread down Poirot's spine. He spun toward the staircase where, moments ago, that ghostly figure had vanished, his heart pounding a rhythm of unease that resonated through the heavy air. The flickering gaslight wavered, casting frantic shadows that danced around him. What was that? Geoffrey's voice quivered, cutting through the frenetic energy. An omen? Poirot replied, his eyes narrowed, scanning the room with a keen intensity. Before he could formulate a plan, another crash resounded from the darkened hall, this time accompanied by a terrified scream that echoed the growing terror permeating the manor. "Agatha!" shrieked Fitzgerald, his face twisted with panic as he instinctively moved toward the sound, fueled by a primal instinct to protect. "Non, wait!" Poirot shouted, his voice slicing through the chaos, but Fitzgerald had already dashed away, leaving nothing but the flickering shadows in his wake. Poirot felt a gnawing sense of urgency, the weight of impending doom pushing against him. "Check on the others," he commanded Mrs. Treadwell and Geoffrey, pivoting on his heel as he followed Fitzgerald's reckless path. Rushing into the hallway, the atmosphere thickening with anticipatory dread, he caught sight of Fitzgerald on the ground, panic-stricken, staring into the room. Poirot stepped closer, dread pooling in his stomach as he glanced past Fitzgerald, who had become a statue of horror, into the darkened room beyond. The gaslights sputtered ominously as they entered. "What did you see?" Poirot demanded, appraising Fitzgerald's petrified countenance. He followed where the man's gaze lay anchored. A figure lay sprawled across the floor, the breath of the storm outside a ghostly whisper against the oppressive stillness, and Poirot's breath caught. "Mrs. Treadwell. Is she dead?" Fitzgerald's voice cracked, steeped in trembling disbelief. "No," Poirot asserted, kneeling beside her limp form. He felt her pulse, a fragile, fluttering thing beneath his fingertips. "But she has succumbed to fear. A fainting spell, perhaps. She could be the next victim. Fitzgerald stammered, his eyes wide with the paranoia that had gripped them all. "Focus," Poirot interjected, with a steely calm. "We must act quickly. Geoffrey, Agatha, come here." He felt the urgency clawing at him. There was something more to uncover within this tempest of fear. As the others entered, Geoffrey knelt beside Poirot, his brow wrinkled in confusion. "What happened? You found her?" "Not yet, but something has changed." Poirot's keen gaze darted around the room, seeking the threads of truth that slipped through the cracks like shadows. The envelope, the broken mirror, it all seemed intertwined with this darkness. But before he could gather his thoughts, a sharp laugh sliced through the air. Agatha had arrived, her face paled as she stood at the door, trembling, eyes darting like a deer, cornered by predators. "Do not tell me you all are standing around like frightened sheep while death prowls these halls." Her voice quivered, but beneath it lay an edge, a guarded veneer of bravado. "Madame Treadwell should remain home, away from all this madness." "Madness?" Poirot repeated. He took a moment, his eyes drilling into Agatha, deciphering every twist of her expression. A tension hung between them, sharp and electric, fraught with deeper anxieties. "Tell me, Agatha, what do you know of this supposed family secret, this unvocalized will. Her eyes darkened. I know that some topics are better left undisturbed. Some matters need burying, and others should remain buried. Your choice of words is intriguing. Poirot leaned closer, observing her. Do they resonate with guilt? Guilt? Hardly, she snapped, forcing bravado through her rising hysteria. Why point fingers? Perhaps Poirot is the one lost in shadows, seeking what brings fear into hearts. Enough, Fitzgerald barked, his breath shaky, but his stance firm. We must check the estate. Something is amiss. All of us feeling engulfed by something unseen could mean we are targets. A muted acknowledgement buzzed in the room, tension thickening, amplifying each heartbeat until Poirot's senses honed in on a detail that felt askew. He rushed back into the hallway, calling out to the remaining guests. Geoffrey, stay near. He launched toward the staircase, the shadows able to swallow them up. As he reached the first landing, a dreadfully familiar sensation pulsed through him. A tightness, a twisting knot of unease, tightened in his gut. Poirot turned abruptly. Where is Fitzgerald? The others blinked back in startled confusion, glancing around at one another. He was just here, Geoffrey exclaimed, the stammer in his voice thickening with fear. Utilize your senses, mes amis, Poirot pressed, dread creeping through him like vines, clawing around his heart. He has vanished. They clamored about the room, voices rising in a cacophony of panic. He couldn't have gone far, Geoffrey insisted, his desperation pulling him toward the door. Look, Agatha interrupted with a tremor in her voice. The door. We may have overlooked in our madness. Poirot's eyes narrowed toward the heavy oak door, its edges slicked by raindrops that trickled like tears down the weathered grain. A gust of wind howled from behind it, and with a desperate rush, he threw open the door to reveal the swirling tempest outside. From the depths of its fury, a solitary figure darted into the night. Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, Poirot called, but the howling wind swallowed his words, drowning him in a sea of despair as he realized the man had slipped away into a darkness far deeper than mere shadows. Where has he gone? The panic in Geoffrey's voice escalated, the grim reality settling heavily within the group. Poirot felt the dreadful awareness, cut sharper. Had they all lost more than just their sanity tonight? We must allocate roles, search for Fitzgerald, he ordered, urgency flaring in every syllable. But as he turned to rally the others, another crash reverberated inside the manor, echoing ominously through the hallways like a death knell. Stay close, and do not stray into the dark alone, he cried. But in that very moment, silence fell, cold and complete, as the gaslight flickered wildly before extinguishing once more, plunging them into a gloom deeper than despair itself. And Poirot's heart sank. They were enveloped in darkness. The shadows were alive, encroaching in a way that promised not just secrets, but danger. Death hovering just out of sight, and amidst the madness, he felt it, the looming threat that had singled them all out, one by one. Chapter 6. Shadows in the Library. A dangerously sharp gasp pierced through the inky silence, the kind that clamors for attention amidst nameless dread. Poirot, breath-caught and wary to the marrow, stood frozen before an impossibly hidden door that had mysteriously swung ajar, revealing the dusty folds of the library, illuminated by flickering gaslight that carved shadows, long and thin against the mahogany shelves. In the heart of the room lay a small glimmer, a silver handle protruding from an ornate book, trembling like the last heartbeat of a forgotten secret. The tempest outside howled fiercely, as if wanting to rip the very fabric of night to shreds. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his heartbeat echoing back from the wood-paneled walls as he approached the book, carefully dislodging it from its dusty perch. He wiped the cover with his sleeve, revealing the gilt letters, familial bonds, and bated breath. A chill slithered down his spine. The title was enough to imbue the moment with sinister resonance. He flipped the book open, revealing not pages, but a meticulously crafted journal, waxed and preserved, saturated with memories that begged to remain hidden. "Poirot, what have you found?" Geoffrey's voice trembled from just beyond the threshold, his anxious eyes darting between the shadows, the wind screeching and banging at the windows as if announcing an unseen calamity ready to happen. "Patience, mon ami," Poirot said, his fingers delicately tracing over the faded ink. A sonorous creak echoed from the room beyond, where more guests stirred, unwelcome tension coiling around them as he began to read the scrawled entries. Each turned page produced a rapid-fire succession of clandestine meetings, heart-rending triumphs tainted with betrayal, and a narrative thick with familial discord. The handwriting shifted with each entry, revealing not just generations of secrets, but intricate webs of grudges preserved over time. "Who shall claim the estate after death? See, curtain falls. The truth shall spill as blood before the thirst is quenched," read one chilling inscription, the ink dark with age and possibly something else. Poirot felt a cold sweat prickle his brow. A name flickered, a name he had overheard just hours earlier, buried within whispered conversations, laced with accusation and fear. As the wind lashed at the windows with renewed violence, Geoffrey stepped closer, his curiosity bordering on compulsion. "Did you find something?" The hesitation in his voice told Poirot all he needed to know about Geoffrey's mounting anxiety. "Indeed, my friend," Poirot replied, barely glancing at him, his mind racing. "But it appears that in our pursuit of this elusive truth, we must recognize that every action afflicts those who dare progress uninvited. Agatha's concealed worries lie buried in this journal." Agatha's name drew a sudden intensity from Geoffrey. "You think she's involved, but she's terrified. She can hardly even speak without trembling. Surely—" "Fear can be a most persuasive mask," Poirot interrupted, noting the flicker of defiance that crossed Geoffrey's face before he turned again to the journal. "Let us decipher from the ashes of this familial fire. What we unearth today could hold the key to revealing who amongst us is ensnared by this darkness." A crack of thunder rattled through the air, shaking Poirot from his musings. Then, within the sudden silence, an overwhelming sense of dread washed upon him. He had become too lost in the labyrinth of ink and paper to heed the realities enveloping him. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the corridor, jolting him into action. He glanced up sharply, nerves tingling with unquantifiable tension. "Stay here," he murmured to Geoffrey as he darted toward the thick curtains woven with shadows, following the sound into the foreboding darkness beyond the library's threshold. "Fitzgerald! Agatha!" he called out as he hurtled into the cold hallway, the gaslight flickering feverishly as if balking at the advancing darkness. Yet all he found was the oppressive silence swallowing each syllable of his urgent plea. An icy wind whipped through, infusing the air with an unshakable reminder that someone was terribly awry. The hushed whispers and swirling fog of suspicion wreaked havoc in his mind, and every muscle tightened in anticipation of what lurked nearby. With a quick stride, he returned to the library, heart hammering like a war drum. Geoffrey, as he entered. The sight that confronted him made his blood run cold. The silver handle was gone. The journal had closed, as if it had never borne the brunt of his inquiry. "No," Poirot breathed, his thoughts careening in disarray. "Where is the journal?" "I don't know," Geoffrey stammered, the edge of panic slicing through his voice. But something about Geoffrey's stance seemed off, defensive. His eyes darted to a darker corner of the library, shadowed and beckoning. Was that a fleeting flicker of something metallic beneath the table? An envelope, perhaps? "Search the shadows carefully. You may uncover what lies hidden," Poirot commanded, moving towards the desk, battling the clenching anxiety that churned in his throat. Just then, he saw it. The brass key, the one that had fallen earlier. Strange. Why was it here? "What is it?" Geoffrey whispered, stepping back. Poirot, his gaze fierce and unyielding, slipped the key into his pocket as a crashing realization crashed over him. What if Fitzgerald's disappearance is tied to this very journal? Has his path led him somewhere we have not yet considered? Or perhaps he knows more than he has divulged. As he shifted his attention to Geoffrey, the atmosphere thickened again. Whispers of discontent, shadows that bore no physical presence, clawing at the edges of their sanity. With newfound urgency, Poirot stepped back toward the door, but found himself confronting a figure. Or was it a spectre? Agatha standing rigid in the doorway, her face a mask of resolute fear. "Get away from there," she shouted, rising like a shadow to seize the journal. "You do not comprehend the depths of what's at stake." But as she lunged, the room erupted into chaos. The window shattered behind her, splintering glass cascading toward the floor like fallen stars. In the whirlwind of movement, the gaslight flickered one last time before plunging them into darkness, and Poirot's heart was seized by an irrefutable certainty. The truth they sought was entwined not only with family secrets, but with the very heart of a struggle, one that would leave only destruction in its wake. "Poirot!" Geoffrey shouted, terror seeping through every crevice of his crumbling facade. But the ferocity of the tempest drowned the sound, enveloping them both. For just then, as an anguished scream pierced the night, Poirot knew they were no longer merely hunters of secrets. They had become prey to a darkness, one that threatened to consume them whole. Chapter 7. A Whisper from the Dead. The piercing crack of thunder split the very air, reverberating through the dimly lit room, as Poirot turned sharply, heart racing. The locket lay sprawled open on the edge of the grand desk, spilling its secrets like the blood of a fresh wound. The embossed initials shone mockingly under the gaslight, unmistakably marking it as Sir Reginald's. The sight of it sent shivers creeping up his spine. As he reached for it, another ominous rumble of thunder rolled overhead, threatening to rip through the fabric of the tempest outside, a tempest that echoed the unrest brewing within the very walls of the manor. "Poirot!" Geoffrey's voice rang sharply from the doorway, filled with urgency and yet laced with something deeper, a raw, unmasked apprehension. "What is it?" "I believe I might have stumbled upon a vital clue," Poirot replied, his heart quickening as he lifted the delicate locket from its resting place. A scant, folded piece of parchment slipped, free, fluttering down like a feather caught in a storm. The air around them thickened with foreboding. The weight of every unspoken word seemed to hang, dangling precariously at the edge of revelation. Geoffrey watched, rapt with trepidation. As Poirot opened the letter, the faint scent of mildew mingling with the unmistakable hint of old paper. The handwriting was spidery, yet frantic, a clear delineation of Sir Reginald's final thoughts. "To whom it may concern," it begins, Poirot read aloud, his voice even but taut with tension. "The bonds of blood are but masks, fragile and thin as water's edge. I know my death approaches, and I fear two shadows that mingle, but one in particular shall bring about my end." With each word, Geoffrey's face twisted deeper into anxiety, as if a physical force was compressing the air in his lungs. "What does he mean, Poirot? Could it be a reflection of our own peril? His death?" Poirot paused, absorbing the letter's implications before continuing. His eyes darted over the script, each word striking with a resonance that reverberated through the very marrow of his bones. The storm raged outside, wind howling, as though it bore witness to the dark undercurrents swirling within the manor itself. "I have been betrayed by one closest to me." "Ah," he murmured, narrowing his gaze as he continued. "This speaks of enmities, buried deep, Geoffrey. In this very house, among those gathered around me, lies a treacherous heart. As my end draws nigh, I have chosen to pen these truths, lest they be swallowed in shadow. Betrayal, unguarded and vicious. Who among us holds such a grudge, such malice?" Geoffrey shifted uneasily, fingers tapping nervously against the mantle's edge, unable to meet Poirot's probing gaze. "You don't think it could be—" "Ah, but fear can mask the mind," Poirot countered sharply, suddenly cognizant of the vulnerability in Geoffrey's hesitations. "This letter reveals potential foes steeped in familial connection, yet driven by greed or jealousy. With each revelation, he felt the grasp of danger intensify, an unseen force tightening its grip around them. "Perhaps it is even within the confines of this room right now," he concluded ominously, casting a glance toward the shadows lingering beyond the amber glow of the gaslight. "But we have no evidence, only words," Geoffrey protested, his voice cracking on the edge of despair. "What if we are wrong? What if the danger extends beyond just physical harm?" "Ah, mon ami," Poirot replied, the rhythmic tapping of the storm lending an eerie cadence to his speech. "Yet words possess a weight of their own, a weight that cannot be dismissed lightly. The very act of unveiling these truths summons a reckoning." "What is that?" Geoffrey's voice dipped to a nervous whisper, pointing toward the doorway behind Poirot. An iron grip of dread wove around Poirot's heart as he turned, the realization that laughter, cold and mocking, echoed faintly beyond the threshold, just beyond their reach. It felt alive. "Stay close," Poirot commanded, the safety of his unyielding presence a bulwark against the chaos swirling around them. Yet as they moved cautiously toward the doorway, another crash retraced the echoes, splintering the tension. And then, the unmistakable glint of metal caught Poirot's eye. A hidden dagger lay abandoned on the floor just outside the library, its blade shimmering, deceptively innocent, as though discarded in haste. Poirot knelt slowly, maintaining his composure even as his mind raced. "God, this evidence speaks," he muttered, his pulse quickening. Geoffrey gasped, backing away instinctively. "What if it is? Can it truly belong to someone here?" "That is what we must ascertain, Geoffrey," Poirot exclaimed, his voice hardening as he studied the blade's surface. "Clean, yet stained," he murmured, brushing his thumb over the edge, examining it closely. "Only a skilled hand could wield such a weapon." Geoffrey began, his voice faltering. "Perhaps it is merely a distraction, something left by one of the servants to make us think—" "Ah, but you do not understand," Poirot interjected, rising back to his feet with sudden resolve. "This betrayal unfolds, revealing layers of dishonesty deeper than we fathom. We are no longer simply observers, but participants in a desperate gamble involving life and death." Poirot's thoughts raced as he comprehended the implications. They were encircled not merely by shadows, but by the spectre of violent secrets that threatened to engulf them. But before his thoughts could anchor in certainty, the door to the library crashed open, and Agatha staggered in, her expression wild and unrestrained. "You must come quickly," she gasped, eyes frantic. "He's returned. Fitzgerald is here, but so is someone else. Someone I never expected." "Who?" Poirot demanded, his heart pounding, as the weight of newly emerging truths hung palpably in the air. "I can't. They're closing in. You must see for yourself. The dead have more to tell than we ever conceived." With that, as the wind howled louder than ever, a darkness fell sharper around them, choking back the glimmers of light, and Poirot sensed the very balance of life teeter precariously against an impending storm, one he knew would turn violent. "Agatha, wait!" he called out, but her figure slipped back into the shadows as she fled, leaving him with the staggering undertow of uncertainty. Partnered with trepidation and a chilling urgency, Poirot grasped the dagger in his hand, casting a determined gaze toward Geoffrey. "We must uncover the truth. It is alive, and it demands to be revealed." Yet as they prepared to follow, the very air thickened with an awareness of dread, until a chilling scream emerged, slicing through the thunder and lightning with sickening clarity, echoing the madness that had unfolded. "Sir Reginald," he whispered, a revelation crystallizing in an instant. Their unraveling knot of secrets had now become a battle for survival. Chapter 8. The Photo That Never Was. A deafening crash of thunder exploded overhead, echoing through the dimly lit corridors of the manor as Poirot stumbled into the study, heart racing. Not from the storm, but from the sight that met his eyes. The photograph, once resting innocently in its ornate frame, lay shattered upon the floor, glass fragments glistening like shattered dreams amid the flickering candlelight. The melancholy visage of Sir Reginald, frozen in time, now lay marred by the chaos of their present turmoil. "Geoffrey!" Poirot barked, dread curling like tendrils of smoke in his throat. "What has happened?" Geoffrey stood wide-eyed, his pulse thrumming visibly at his throat, a crumpled piece of parchment clutched in his shaking hand. I don't know. I turned my back for just a moment. It was right here." His voice wavered, laden with desperation. Poirot felt the weight of the moment crush down upon him. That photograph had held secrets, a silent witness to truths, barely whispered amidst the tempest of family loyalties. As the storm outside swelled into a torrential roil, Poirot knelt swiftly, fingers grazing the shards of glass, each jagged piece reflecting the chaos of the night. Could it be deliberate, Geoffrey? A statement of intent? The question hung heavy in the air, electricity crackling, as the gaslight flickered precariously with each gust of wind that rattled the windows. "I wouldn't put it past anyone," Geoffrey spat, panic rising within him, as if the walls themselves conspired against them. "The secrets within these rooms, they are more dangerous than we ever imagined." At that moment, a distant rumble of thunder rolled through the house, drowning out the rustle of Geoffrey's frayed nerves. Poirot's gaze shifted, suddenly sharp and calculating. "What of the letter?" he prompted, beckoning towards the wrinkled parchment in Geoffrey's grip. Geoffrey handed it over hastily, words tumbling forth in a frantic rush. It was pinned, beneath the frame, Poirot, a note, a warning. As Poirot unfolded the paper, he noted the handwriting, the frantic scrawl unmistakably that of Sir Reginald, his final thoughts echoing through the ink stains. "Beware those who masquerade in shadows. A photo holds secrets I am unwilling to keep. Seek the truth buried within." "Shadows?" Poirot murmured aloud, the cold weight of realization settling in like frost on the window-sill. "Yes, indeed. The missing journal, the danger that lays hidden in this house, not only of family ties, but of ambitions that lurk in the folds of memory." His voice sharpened, drawing closer to understanding. "How well do you know the staff, Geoffrey? What do they conceal?" "I trust no one," Geoffrey replied, raising his chin defiantly, yet the tremor in his voice belied his affectation. "But we've always kept our distance, Poirot. Perhaps they know more than they are willing to share." "The parlour-maid, Elise," Poirot said with a sudden clarity. "She has been acting too strangely." A flicker of recognition crossed her face when I mentioned the journal. "And William, the gardener. He has lingered too long, with an ear to the walls." Geoffrey winced. "You suspect them, then? A conspiracy of service?" "Indeed, or perhaps mere ignorance. Regardless," he pursued resolutely, "they must be questioned. There is much at stake, and I sense we are ignorant of layers yet unpeeled." As they moved toward the door, a shrill scream ripped through the night, sending ice spiraling down Poirot's spine. "Sir Reginald!" came the mournful wail from the depths of the staircase. The sound echoed ominously, a cry for help that twisted like a knife through the very marrow of the manor. "Come, we must investigate," shouted Geoffrey, urgency flaring anew on his face. "No," Poirot commanded, stepping back, his resolve hardening. A hasty retreat into darkness would yield more chaos. "We must first ensure our own safety. The shadows here hold malice, and to rush in without caution is to invite disaster." "Poirot, we are beyond the point of caution," Geoffrey urged, eyes wild. "What if it is too late?" "Then we will unravel the threads of this chaos carefully," Poirot responded, holding Geoffrey's gaze with a steadiness born of conviction. "We must diffuse the storm brewing within before confronting the tempest outside. Seek out the staff. See what they clutch beneath their fears." Reluctantly, Geoffrey nodded, and they both scattered into the murkiness of the home, each step taken with clandestine purpose. Poirot's mind whirred fervently, a clash of motives, hidden faces, and concealed truths swirled in the dark corners of his thoughts. Moments later, Poirot found himself standing before the kitchen door, the very heart of the household pulsating with life and secrets. He raised his hand, finding the resolve to knock, but halted as whispers emerged through the thin wooden barrier. Snatches of conversation, urgent, clandestine. "He cannot discover it," a soft voice hissed. "If he does, we are done for," a second voice added, sharp with panic. Poirot exchanged a glance with Geoffrey, their unspoken agreement echoing in the air. Transitioning from observers to active participants, Poirot pushed open the door with a slow, calculated motion, revealing Elise and another staff member, Martha, glancing up in horror as he entered. "What have we here?" Poirot's voice cut through the charged atmosphere like a blade, and the clamor in the room fell, silent, tension thick enough to choke. "What were you so keen to protect?" The two women exchanged glances. their faces pale as marble, before Elise stammered, "Nothing, sir. We were just—" "Lies," Poirot interrupted sharply, stepping closer, eyes fixed on theirs, piercing through the facade. "You were discussing a photograph, were you not? A photograph that has gone missing tonight?" The air grew heavy, suffocating, as silence beset them. A mere heartbeat echoed in that tense moment. And then, in the distance, the sound of glass shattering again rang out from the hallway, like the crack of fate itself manifesting. Elise's gaze darted to her companion, panic blooming like wildflowers in spring. A faintest whisper escaped her lips. "We must go." Before Poirot could ask another question, Elise turned and fled. "Stop," he commanded, but she vanished down the corridor, leaving the quiet of the kitchen tinged with repressed secrets and fear. Poirot's heart raced. The moments hung suspended, as he realized suddenly that this eviction of the truth connected with the photo and the storm of betrayal swirling around them, it could unravel quickly. "Geoffrey," he bellowed, "follow her. This truth must not escape our grasp." But before Geoffrey could move, a shadow loomed in the doorway behind them, and Poirot spun, freezing as a chilling voice slithered through the air like a serpent. "Where do you think you're going?" A figure stepped forward, smirking, eyes glinting malevolently in the dim light. The unmistakable outline of Fitzgerald returned, and clearly ready to unveil his own secrets. "Ah, mon ami," Fitzgerald's mocking tone dripped with malice. "It seems you are all terribly late for the party." Chapter 9. The Trap is Set. The sudden shattering sound of glass echoed throughout the dimly lit dining room, splintering the air with an urgency that sent everyone's hearts racing. Poirot stood rigid, eyes narrowing as he witnessed the remnants of a wine decanter cascading like shards of a sinister revelation across the polished mahogany table, blood-red liquid pooling beneath. The guests, caught between shock and fear, exchanged furtive glances as if the room itself had become an accomplice in the chaos. "What now, mon ami? Must we witness further destruction?" Geoffrey's voice trembled, uncertainty woven into the fabric of his words. Poirot, however, felt a spark ignite within him, blending urgency with purpose, like the storm winding outside. "No, Geoffrey. The storm is but a backdrop to the tempest, brewing within these walls," he replied, an ancient insight coiling through his mind, strings of intent tightening around the heart of the matter. "We must now act decisively. A reenactment. We shall draw back the curtain to reveal the puppets in play." "Reenactment?" Geoffrey looked puzzled, his brow furrowing. "You mean—" "Indeed," Poirot exclaimed, eyes alight with fervor. "Tonight we shall lay bare the truth, illuminate the shadows. Each guest holds a piece of this elaborate puzzle. But first, we must set the stage." He cast a contemplative glance towards the frozen expressions of the room. "Gather them. We require their participation. Each shall play their role, however unwillingly." With an air of command, Poirot guided Geoffrey toward the adjoining salon, where the remaining guests were stewing in a thickening atmosphere of suspicion. He positioned himself strategically at the head of the table, allowing the flickering gaslight to caress the stark lines of his suit, a beacon of calm amid the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady, yet electric with anticipation, "an unsettling tragedy has gripped us tonight. The threads of deception woven tightly among us. Each of you knows more than you are willing to reveal, and it is time we confront the truth. I ask you to indulge me. We shall recreate the events that led to Sir Reginald's untimely demise." He allowed the weight of his declaration to envelop the room, the guests visibly recoiling under its gravity. "What madness is this?" Fitzgerald sneered, his arrogance at odds with the tremors beneath his bravado. "You think we are mere players in your little farce?" "Madness, Monsieur Fitzgerald," Poirot replied, eyes narrowing. "No, it is clarity amidst betrayal. One of you holds knowledge that could reveal the killer among us. Let us illuminate the darkness together." He motioned to Geoffrey, who nodded, stepping forward to draw the curtains, allowing a gust of wind to billow through the room, as if nature itself was eager for the impending revelation. Poirot fixed his attention on each guest, dissecting the subtle shifts in their expressions. The tension simmered as Elise and Martha exchanged quick, anxious glances, while the elderly Lady Beatrice sank deeper into her chair, her bony fingers trembling around her teacup as if seeking solace. "Were you not the last to see Sir Reginald alive?" Poirot probed gently, directing his question toward her, the silver-haired matriarch suddenly a focal point of scrutiny. I was merely passing through," she stammered, her lips quivering. If anyone, it was Fitzgerald who had been near him last. "Admirable deflection, but make no mistake," Poirot said, voice low and sardonic. "Each of you is entangled in this misadventure. Geoffrey, may we please retrieve the dagger, the one found in the study? It may serve as our most telling participant in this dramatization. Bring it forth." Geoffrey hesitated for a fraction, fear flashing across his features. "You wish to use it, Poirot? That weapon? Isn't that dangerous?" "In the hands of reckless fools, perhaps." Poirot's expression hardened. "In mine, it is a tool of clarity." As Geoffrey hurried off to retrieve the dagger, Poirot turned once more to the guests. "Think, my friends. What do we know? Who had the most to gain from Sir Reginald's demise? Motive is essential in understanding this puzzle." Elizabeth, sitting across from him, fidgeted with the lace on her sleeve. "Reginald was insufferable," she gasped, an edge of bitterness lacing her voice. "But I would never wish him dead." "But would you allow another to act on your behalf?" Poirot pressed gently, watching for the ripple of truth in her response. At that moment, a shuddering breath escaped Fitzgerald's lips, his mask slipping, as he retorted, "You dare imply I would conspire against my own kin? You misunderstand, Poirot. I would not sink to such depths, even if the depths seemed to beckon." The wind outside howled against the walls, a howl that mirrored the suffocating atmosphere within. Poirot remained impassive, weighing each word with the finesse of a practiced artisan. "Every secret exposed inches us closer to the core of this tragedy," he declared, resolving to drive deeper into the heart of suspicion. "Geoffrey is returning. Let us align the scene. Let this dagger serve not only as evidence, but as a guidepost to unravel our tangled fate." Just then, there was a commotion at the door as Geoffrey emerged, clutching the dagger, the gleam of its blade slicing through the candlelight. "Poirot," he stammered, eyes wide, "there's something—" Before he could finish, the lights flickered precariously, leaving the room plunged into unnerving half-darkness where shadows danced like specters along the walls. The moment stretched, taut with dread, anticipation swirling like storm clouds in the minds gathered at the table. And in that instant, a throat-chilling scream erupted from the hallway outside, cutting through the darkness with raw fear. The room froze, breath held tight, as Poirot's steady gaze fell upon the shadow behind the doorframe, an unwanted visitor looming with malevolence. His heart quickened, instincts kicking into overdrive, and he felt the tightness of danger wrap around him, tightening like a noose. "Quickly!" he shouted, finger pointing with urgency. "It cannot be what I think. Get the lights back." But as Geoffrey darted to comply, Poirot could feel the air shift, the threat pressing closer, reality bending at the edges, leaving them precariously balanced on the precipice of revelation. "Someone is coming." Poirot's voice rose with mounting urgency, shaken to the core. But it is not just curiosity in their footsteps, it is intent. We must prepare for what they bring, for it may unravel all we have strived to protect. And just as another shattering scream pierced the air, the electricity crackled, fingers of fate reaching ever closer, cloaked in the unseen web of lies, a revelation of terror that demanded their immediate attention. Chapter 10. The Web of Lies. A scream shattered the heavy stillness, reverberating through the manor like the toll of a death knell, icy fingers of fear gripping the air. Poirot surged forward, heart racing, half expecting the retribution of a malevolent force, as the flickering gaslights cast jittery shadows on the faces of those trapped within the dining room. The overwhelming scent of red wine, spilled like blood upon the table, mingled grotesquely with the rising panic, each heartbeat a countdown to the revelation he feared yet craved. "Who screams?" he demanded, his voice slicing through the rising tumult, steady and commanding. The guests, caught in a whirlwind of terror and accusation, eyes darting everywhere, felt the walls expand and contract with the growing tension. Fitzgerald's bravado crumbled, his expression shifting to something bereft of its usual contempt, a flicker of fear igniting behind his smirk. "Surely it is not over a mere decanter, mon ami." Poirot's gaze slid from Fitzgerald to Lady Beatrice, her fragile hands now trembling uncontrollably around her teacup. Even her porcelain countenance seemed drained of colour. "Madame, was it not you who detected a hint of danger lurking here? Can you not draw us toward its source?" I know nothing," she stammered, but even through her fear, Poirot caught a glimmer of something deeper, buried beneath layers of genteel denial. Someone in this room was lying, and he would unearth the truth buried beneath. Their facades, like a gardener, would weed out thorns from a blossoming bed. "Then allow us to draw the spider from its web," Poirot declared, his voice firm. "Each of you is enmeshed in this dreadful drama. Geoffrey, my friend, we need a candle. The darkness conceals not only fears, but the veiled truths that bleed through deception." Geoffrey nodded, scrambling for the light, as he directed the others with a glance, the tension in the air snapping sharper, like a taut rope ready to fracture. As Geoffrey fetched the candle, Poirot's attention sharpened on Elizabeth, who hung back, her face a mask of conflicted emotions, fear, guilt, and something deeper, more sinister. "Ah, Mademoiselle Elizabeth," he said, his tone almost playful, yet calculating. "You seem unusually quiet this evening. A well-planned frame might serve better than a solitary voice, non?" "What are you insinuating?" she shot back, the tremor in her voice belaying a facade of strength. "Merely that silence can cloak one's truth. In the art of performance tonight, we seek the players who wore the masks of innocence but reveled in betrayal." His sharp gaze bore down on her, peeling at the layers of her carefully constructed defenses. As the candle flickered to life, illuminating the room like a breath of hope amidst encroaching dread, Geoffrey returned, eyes wide, as he held it aloft. "Poirot, it was Martha who screamed. I found her near the study." A flurry of whispers erupted, and Poirot felt the urgency soar. "The study?" he echoed, every syllable crackling with energy. "And what was she doing there?" His mind raced, shifting pieces of the puzzle until their sharp edges aligned with pinpoint precision. She seemed distressed, trembling, Geoffrey recounted breathlessly. I thought, then let us pursue this thread, Poirot commanded, pivoting on his heel, the candle casting dancing shadows as he strode toward the hallway, each step a measure of resolve. The flickering light extended around the corner, and the corridor was now steeped in an eerie silence, a dark phantasm of suspense holding its breath. He found Martha crouched on the floor, her hands clasped over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. What has happened? Poirot asked, steady yet gentle, kneeling beside her as he attempted to coax the truth from her paralyzed form. We must leave. It is here, she gasped, her voice trembling, dread spilling forth as though the darkness itself hunted her down. Sir Reginald, he... Get hold of yourself, my dear. Speak, Poirot urged. But just then, a distant rustle interrupted them. A figure stepped into the corridor, illuminated by the candlelight, a tall silhouette wrapped in shadows, too vague for recognition. Poirot instinctively reached for the dagger Geoffrey had retrieved earlier. Its steel felt comforting in his grasp, a harbinger of truth waiting to be unleashed. Identify yourself, he called into the darkness, voice echoing back like a shot in the night. Ah, but Poirot, is it not I who should ask you that? The voice was smooth as silk, dripping with mockery as Fitzgerald materialized from the recesses. What a delightful scene unfolding. Are we pretending to be brave now? Enough. You have played your game well, but the curtain is about to fall. Poirot reclaimed his authority. And now I ask again, what do you know about Sir Reginald? Speak of what you dismissed in your arrogance. A smirk contorted Fitzgerald's features, confidence rolling off him in waves. You seem so eager to unravel the truth. Perhaps it's not your little grey cells that need a workout. Perhaps you're blind to what truly lurks among us. Lady Beatrice sputtered, small and quivering. Fitzgerald, you know nothing. You were not... I was there, Beatrice. I know exactly what I heard. His voice crescendoed. And what I saw, the photograph, it was the key to his demise. That proclamation sent shockwaves through the group, and silence fell, punctuated only by the muffled thunder rumbling in the background. What photograph? Poirot interjected sharply, eyes narrowing with deadly intent. What wicked scheme is this? The air thickened with unspoken accusations, eyes darting wildly, revealing the fault lines gnawing at the guests' composure. They were all ensnared in the web of deceit they had spun, and with every second that passed, Poirot's anticipation swelled as he sought the heart of the truth, lingering in the shadows. Yet, before the revelation could dawn, another scream erupted at the far end of the corridor, a voice he recognized all too well. Elise. The air grew heavy with dread, a palpable sense of foreboding wrapping around him like the encroaching storm clouds of the night. Quick, he shouted, urgency flaring in his chest. To the sound of that scream, the webs of lies shall not bind us any longer. The room ignited with chaos, footsteps mixing with the thunder that cracked overhead. Poirot propelled himself forward, the chilling reality that one of them could be the next victim loomed over them like an unyielding shadow, obscuring the truth further still. As they raced down the hallway, the truth clung like fog around them, thick and unrelenting. And at that moment, almost as if fate flipped the script, electricity surged through the walls and the lights dimmed once again. The way before them folded into darkness, a threshold between truth and despair, leaving only the chilling echoes of footsteps retreating into the night. A shadow slipped, away, too close, too familiar, one who threatened to unveil everything they hoped to conceal. Chapter 11. The Confession No One Heard. A gunshot cracked through the air, a thunderous noise that shattered the lingering silence of the corridor, sending waves of panic cascading over the gathered guests. Poirot felt the blood drain from his face as the echo of the shot ricocheted against the manor walls, mingling grotesquely with the brooding thunder outside. Instinctively, he clutched the dagger, its cold steel a reminder of the unresolved mystery that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. "Quick, to the source," he commanded, his voice barely a whisper beneath the rising tide of chaos. The candlelight danced in wild flickers, creating a tapestry of shadows that twisted and pulled the familiar corridor into an alien terrain of dread. Rushing toward the study, Poirot's heart pounded with both fear and anticipation. Each footfall felt heavier than the last, the gusts of wind outside hammering against the windows as if urging him to reconsider the peril of his pursuit. Could sense the tremors of anticipation rippling through his companions, Geoffrey, Lady Beatrice, and the ever-volatile Fitzgerald, their faces masks of terror caught in the gleam of flickering candlelight. "Stay close," Poirot instructed, but the urgency in his voice barely penetrated the veil of horror cloaking their minds. Peering into the study, Poirot's pulse quickened at the sight before him. Martha stood in shock, her back rigid against the wall, eyes wide and glazed as though she stared into the depths of hell. She trembled, fingers brushing against her throat, where specks of crimson glimmered, bright against the marble white of her skin. Behind her, on the floor, lay the shattered remnants of a porcelain figure, its delicate features now cruelly distorted. "Martha," Poirot knelt beside her, catching her gaze, willing her to speak. "What has happened?" He's dead," she gasped, the horrifying revelation ripping from her throat. "Sir Reginald, he was just—" Her voice crumpled. Beneath the weight of burgeoning terror, her fingers ceasing their frenzied movement as a fresh tremor coursed through her. "I saw it. I saw everything." "The photograph," Fitzgerald interjected, his arrogance crumbling under the strain of fear. "It has to do with the photograph, does it not? We need to hear the truth before it's too late." "Monsieur Fitzgerald," Poirot replied, his voice laced with calm authority, "it is not the time to play these games. Honor the gravity of the moment. Martha, please tell us what you saw." The flickering candlelight cast a harsh glare over her face, illuminating the glistening tears streaking her cheeks. "Reginald was meeting with someone who shouldn't have been here. I didn't understand at first. I thought they were merely sharing gossip," she managed, each word strained and thick with the weight of horror. "But I was close enough to hear their whispers." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his little grey cells working into a furious rhythm. "What did you hear?" he pressed, desperate to extract every thread of truth from her trembling lips. "Speak, my dear." "Martha," Lady Beatrice interjected, her voice almost a whimper. "Are you sure? Do you mean to say—" "He kept mentioning a secret. Something about loyalty," Martha uttered, glancing around the room as if expecting the shadows to spring forth with more horror. "He was afraid. I could see the fear in his eyes. And then—" She gasped, fresh tears spilling forth. "And then there was a loud bang, and just then, the flickering candle illuminated movement behind Poirot. The shadows on the wall seemed to quilt together, twisting in sinuous shapes, and from it emerged a figure, too familiar yet cloaked in the spectre of dread. "Ah, how riveting!" Fitzgerald exclaimed, a mocking tone infusing his voice as he reveled in the chaos. "I must say, hats off to any number of pulsating filaments weaving this tale of woe." "Fitzgerald," Poirot warned, feeling anger surge beneath the surface. "Like hot lava, this is no jest. Sir Reginald's life has been taken, and your flippant tongue serves only as a distraction. Did you see who was with him? Enough of games." Fitzgerald's brow furrowed the moment the mention of death punctuated the air around them. "I was merely observing, possessing no desire to intervene, but oh, how could I have foreseen that very moment would become content for another unearthly tale?" A smirk flickered at the corners of his mouth, a taunting challenge to Poirot's resolve. "Enough with your riddles. Someone needs to take responsibility for these actions," Geoffrey interjected, his voice trembling. "We all want answers. Who was Reginald meeting? Who shot him?" Martha recoiled at the sudden shift in attention, grasping her hands together as though physically restraining the tumult within her. "I saw a figure, waiting in the shadows. They spoke with anger. But Reginald, he dismissed them. I never thought—" The room thickened with tension, each heartbeat fragile, the flickering candle illuminating the panic spilling across their faces in hues of fear and accusation. "Why did you never tell anyone before, Martha?" Poirot pressed, struggling to weave the strands of her fear into something meaningful. "What stopped you from revealing this?" "I didn't want to believe—" Her breath hitched, and she trembled anew, unable to meet the many eyes searching for the truth. "I thought perhaps it was all just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Fitzgerald scoffed, the flicker of his confidence unsettling Poirot. Funny how misunderstandings seem to have tragic endings in these charming tales. "Enough," Poirot's voice rang out, slicing through the tension. "Tell us now what you know. You cannot emerge from the shadows and expect no consequences." He moved closer, narrowing his gaze on Martha, whose eyes darted around nervously. "Either you take the stand and enlighten us with all you saw, or we shall be left to interpret your silence as a sinister complicity." "Poirot," Geoffrey muttered, fear clouding his tone, "do you truly think she could have fired the weapon? Or was it someone else? Someone who played the part of the loyal confidant?" Martha looked from one face to another, the weight of their expectations becoming unbearable. "Please," she whispered finally, her voice trembling, "you don't understand." "Then make us understand," Poirot urged, the urgency of the moment pulsing with electric anticipation. Suddenly, the air crackled, electricity thrumming against their skin, a reminder of the presence lurking in the shadows. Before she could speak any further, a sudden crash echoed through the house, resounding like the final death knell. The candles sputtered violently, light dimming until the world around them dissolved into shadow. A figure darted past them, outrageously swift, a silhouette sweeping toward the flickering light, a plot unspooling beneath the very flesh of deceit they so desperately tried to unearth. "Stop!" Poirot shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. "Who goes there? Identify yourself." But the figure vanished into darkness, leaving only a palpable sense of panic threading through the air like a shroud. Martha's eyes were wide with terror as she backed against the wall, a singular thought hanging heavy in the air, a confession caught on the brink of revelation, teetering on the edge of light and concealed truth, desperately needing to emerge before the next shot rang out. Chapter 12. The Secret Beneath the Staircase. A piercing scream cut through the oppressive atmosphere, a guttural wail that echoed off the walls like the clamour of clashing swords. Poirot's heart raced like a caged bird, adrenaline flaring as he turned sharply toward the source, a staircase leading down into the shadows of the manor's lower levels. The candlelight flickered violently, casting distorted shapes on the walls, the sense of foreboding pressing down heavily. He swept toward the staircase, pulse thrumming, instinct telling him that the true heart of the matter lay hidden below, a secret buried beneath layers of deception, waiting to be unearthed. "Stay back," Martha's desperate voice rose above the din, her face pale with horror as she clung to the doorframe behind them. "I saw something down there, something I could not comprehend." Poirot stopped momentarily, trying to assess the storm of emotions swirling in Martha's wide eyes, a mix of terror and guilt that gnawed at the edges of her composure. "Martha, we cannot ignore this." His voice was firm, carefully laced with authority. "The game has escalated to a dangerous level. We must descend." Behind him, Fitzgerald's laughter bounced off the richly decorated walls, a strange discord in the tense atmosphere. "Ah, the hidden bowels of number 9. Isn't this where the skeletons are best stored, Poirot?" His jest was laboured, laced with a nervous edge, revealing fissures in his bravado. Ignoring Fitzgerald, Poirot nudged further toward the darkened staircase. The air within, laden with dust and secrets yet untold. With measured steps, he began his descent, the manic rhythm of his heart battling the apprehension thickening around him like a storm cloud. He moved downwards until the flickering candlelight barely illuminated the stone steps. Then he paused, listening intently as the thunder outside rumbled like the wrath of an imprisoned god. "Care to join us, Martha?" Poirot's voice carried over the distance as he glanced up, beckoning her with a curt nod. I can't," Martha stuttered from the shadows of the doorway, her fingers trembling against the frame as if holding the weight of her own fears. "I'm afraid." "Fear never unlocked a door," he replied, continuing down cautiously, the click of his shoes echoing in the gloom. "Do not let it seal your fate. Remember, all things shall be revealed in the light." Descending deeper, Poirot could feel the air grow damp and cold, a shiver racing down his spine. The room opened into a cluttered cellar, filled with forgotten relics. Boxes, dusty furniture swathed in white sheets, and cobwebs, their fine filaments tangled like the sordid tales hiding within the manor's walls. It was there, in that catacomb of past lives, that Poirot spotted a fissure in the earthen floor, a space between the shelves, revealing a faint glimmer. He advanced, an instinct nudging him closer. "What lies beneath?" he murmured to himself, crouching to the ground. The glimmer beckoned like a lighthouse in the fog, and as he reached for it, a shadow crossed over his shoulder, dark and foreboding. He spun around, instinctually gripping the dagger in his coat pocket, eyes narrowing towards the visage emerging from the shadows. "Monsieur Poirot," a voice rakish and laced with malice, broke through the darkness, making his skin prickle. It was Fitzgerald, a cruel twist to his lips. "I wouldn't go poking about down there if I were you. Secrets have a way of biting the hand that feeds them." For an instant, Poirot felt the tension crackle in the air, palpable and alive, like the calm before a violent storm. "You misjudge me, Fitzgerald. I am not afraid of the secrets lurking here," Poirot declared, rising to his full height. "Yet, it is you who seem eager to keep them concealed. Tell me, what do you know?" Fitzgerald chuckled darkly, amusement mingled with something more sinister, more profound. What a delightful dance we are choreographing here, isn't it? You with your bravado, prancing into darkness, while others lurk in the shadows, merely biding time. Poirot's gaze sharpened, a storm brewing within him as he studied Fitzgerald. You offer riddles, not truths, yet I believe your fear of discovery runs deeper than you reveal. As they exchanged glances, Poirot's attention shifted back to the flicker on the ground, compelling him forward. He crouched once more, fingers trembling with anticipation. He uncovered the source of the glimmer, a locket, its delicate gold, almost warm to touch, the hinges coated with dust, whispering of years forgotten. Something inside a small photograph slipped out, fluttering to the ground, revealing the face of a striking young woman, her expression hauntingly familiar, and yet an unsettling fear clawed at Poirot's gut. "Who is she?" he demanded, searching Fitzgerald's eyes for a response. "The past grows fangs in the darkness," Fitzgerald replied cryptically, peeling back layers of his mask, revealing shadows of anxiety in his demeanor. "And you may not wish to discover what the past has in store for you, Poirot." But he was already rising, unrelenting in his pursuit. "Do not play games with me, Fitzgerald. You know the connection. Here lies a thread that leads back to Reginald's demise." Fitzgerald stepped back, a flicker of genuine fear crossing his features before it was masked by mockery. "Ah, there, like a moth to flame. What you seek will only consume you." Suddenly, the darkness around them seemed to surge, a crash reverberating through the cellar, rattling the bottles on the shelves above. Poirot stumbled forward, the candlelight dancing wildly as the very floor beneath him shifted. Shadows moved and twisted, closing in as if drawn by the pulse of the unfolding truth. "Martha!" he shouted, looming panic threading through his voice, his thoughts racing as he grasped the locket, tightening his grip. "Do not reveal anything until I return." But as the dust settled, Poirot felt it, a brush of cold fabric against his skin, a whisper in the air that sent shivers down his spine. His heart lurched as the true danger bore down on the manor, and in that instant, a gunshot resounded once again. This time, it was aimed at him. Far more than a mere portrait now, the secrets between them. The very air thickened with intent, promise, and peril. For as thunder rumbled outside, the voices of the past desperately beckoned him forward, toward light, truth, and revelation, or to his peril.